Hi, my name is Christine, and I'm an interviewer for Wicked Connection, and we're on a mission to help students figure out their career paths and to succeed in their field of choice in school. So, if you're watching this right now, you've probably seen our interview with Felipe already, who is a first-year resident studying family medicine at University of Toronto. And the second part of this video, we're going to talk about all the things that he did to make his application successful and get into medical school. And as we all know, it is super hard to get into Canadian medical school. So without further ado, let's check out what his advices are. Do you have any tips for those people who are like, there's dead set, they know they want to get into medical school, and they want to do everything possible right, from like first year to fourth year? Like, do you have any advice in terms of what they should do, like, to have I guess, a successful application or a higher?
So I think that at least in Canada, the most important thing is getting good grades. If you get like really good, if you really dedicate yourself scholarly wise and you get really good grades, it opens so many doors for you that you wouldn't understand. And so that should always be the number one priority. Number two would be to try to do things that you're interested in, and that you like to do. For instance, if you want to be like president of like a sports club, or if you want to be involved in something like that, definitely do it. I wouldn't say there's any one true path to success because they look at people from all walks of life. So if you do something that you like and you do a good job of it, then you're more likely to have something more impressive to show than, for instance, if you forced yourself to do research like I did, hated it, and then not really have anything to show for the end of it. I mean, I can talk about my research experiences and what I learned from it, but I feel like I would have been an even better candidate if I had picked something I really liked, that I was really passionate about, and I could really show off something like that more. Um, and I would really try to stay well rounded because it really comes down to a lot to three things: is your application for medical school. It's your grades, your MCAT score, and your extracurriculars. And MCAT score is one of those things that you can't really control. It's a lot of practice for it, but it is standardized testing. You can get a lot of different results based on what test you get. And so I wouldn't say that's something that you can really control. You can always do your best for it, but grades and your extracurriculars you have a lot more agency over. So really try to get those two as best as you can. Hmm.
I really like how you talked about like doing something you like and then really taking that forward, because I think a lot of people, they also do a lot of things at once, but like maybe play more minor roles and whatnot. So
Hmm.
um, based on what you say, correct me if I'm wrong, then do you like, is it better for people like to pursue one aspect, like say you're talking about sports, to be on like the sports team and whatnot, but really dedicate their time to that sports rather than doing sports and then do research, doing all that? Or do you think it's better to try to dabble at a little bit of everything?
I think that it depends, and if ideally would be a balance between the two. I wouldn't dive into one thing so much that it's your entire application because a little bit of variety just adds more interest to your application, and it gives you more skills that you'll be able to hone in on. So if you had a few things that you've done, like you volunteered at the hospital, you did some research, you worked with the sports, you volunteer with youth in your home or your free time. If you have like a variety of a few things that you really dedicate yourself to, as opposed to like 100 small things that you really don't get much out of, I'd much rather someone who dedicated that time, like dedicate a lot to those few things. But if you only dedicate yourself to one thing, I feel like you're almost limiting yourself going forward. And when you apply, there's a section which looks at your extracurriculars, and they literally have you rank one to, I think they have 42 spaces. And so if you only have one thing, it would be, you'd feel awful when you're applying to only write one thing, even if it's the best thing that you've ever done. So definitely try to find a balance of the two.
Awesome, thank you so much. And then what about like the interview process? Actually, what, before the interviews, what about like in terms of deciding which program to go into? Do you think there's a specific program that gives people a better chance of getting into, or like certain courses that you think is good for medical school, that you wish you took or you're glad you took before you got into medical school? Or
Mm,
any of those
that,
kind of things like that?
that's interesting. So in terms of like courses, I'd say that as long as you have the prerequisites that you need to apply, can take whatever you are interested and can do well in, because you really want to make sure you have good grades, and that's still your top thing. In terms of what was really helpful, I think was what was really helpful to me was that I did my bachelor's in immunology and microbiology, and what was really helpful is like that gave me a really strong foundation going into medical school to understand some of those immunologic topics. But by no means would I say that that was a requirement. That was sort of a bonus. If I could go back and do it all over again, I think I actually would have taken easier courses than microbiology, because those were very heavy and required and there's what I'm trying to say is that there's easier ways to try and get good grades so that you can satisfy that requirement, so that you could be a good candidate. But overall, I don't regret that I did take a little bit of the harder courses when applying to get in. In terms of like which schools to apply to all of them that you can. Because it's so hard to get in and you don't know how the admissions process they vary year by year. You really just want to make sure you have as best chances as you can, and obviously like you have to take your own financial circumstances into account. But for instance, if you're in Ontario, I'd recommend applying to every Ontario school, except NASM, unless you're from there, because that one's very much more of a regional school, so they really like to select people from Northern Ontario. And so if you are from Northern Ontario, you have really good chances. But if you're outside, it is a little bit harder to get into that one. So that one would be one that I didn't apply to NAWSM, for instance, during my applications to medical school, but I applied to most other schools in the country.
And then maybe just a little bit, I know like the interview process can be quite different for each school. So how did you prepare for those interviews?
hmm So I actually only interviewed at two schools, and I got lucky that I got into one of them. Um, And really, you got to understand the format, whether it's like a traditional panel interview or an MMI interview. And you prepare for those like substantially different. But it's going to be very similar to you really should practice with a bunch of different people. There's a lot of courses usually offered at the universities themselves that give training on traditional and MMI interviews. You can usually book through the learner equity office at your university. They often offer like maybe like a 15 or 30-minute interview that you can practice with them, and you can work on like what to say, what not to say, how to work on your flow. And then at the end of the day, as hard as it is, really try not to get nervous. Try to get a good night's sleep the night before, which I definitely wasn't able to do. But if you're able to really try and keep calm, that's one of the most important things. They know you're going to be nervous; they're expecting it, um, and just try your best, be friendly, and really try to hone in on why you want to do this and get good reasons as to why you'd be a good doctor.
All right, thank you. That's really, really good advice. Any last minute or last thoughts about for students who want to pursue medical school or who wants to become a doctor? Anything like tips or anything or advice you want them to consider, like really think about before pursuing that
I guess
path?
the I guess this would be a really good time to talk about burnout. And I think that this is a really important topic that a lot of people aren't really aware of. I think it's gotten a little bit more press with the pandemic and everything, but burnout is something that's really hit pretty much all healthcare practitioners as a whole. And what it is that it's basically um, when a person's been overworked to the point that they no longer find joy in what they're doing, or they find themselves so fatigued that they don't care about what they're doing. And this was something that happened to a lot of people in my class. I think that even happened to me during a while. I was on my internal medicine rotation, and it was an unfortunate scheduling circumstance where I was on 24-hour call every other day for so it was like day on, day off, day on, day off, day on. So I had to do that, and I think I ended up working like counting all those call shifts and everything that I did. I think it was like an 83-hour week or something like that. And at that point, I was so done with everything. It really took a toll on me, and it was one of those things that it was sort of a freak schedule that did happen. I got the short end of the stick from everyone else, but it really put me into perspective about how, for a lot of physicians, this is what they're doing for months on end, especially in locations that really have underserved populations. Um, for instance, in Windsor, there's a huge shortage of anesthesiologists, And I think I heard, I'm not sure if this is true, but I think I heard a rumor that they were doing call shifts like one in every 3 days. And that's something that's extremely exhausting to do if you have to do your full job for 24 hours and then you have to go home and recover, resync your sleep schedule, and then go back and keep doing it over and over again overnights. It can get quite exhausting. So what a lot of people don't realize is the toll that that can have on people. And I really encourage people to read about stories about physician burnout. It's a huge topic, and there's a lot of stories that are being shared right now. And it's really important to listen to these things, look for the signs of burnout within your colleagues and your friends, and be there to support people.
Thank you. That's really good insight into something. And like you said, like I don't think people really consider, and like especially those thinking of pursuing medicine, might not be like thinking about. So really, really happy that you brought up this point. And hopefully, maybe in the future we could talk more and maybe get some other medical students or physicians or residents to really talk about this topic, maybe dive in deeper into it and get their experience as well. So thank you so much, Felipe. I really appreciate your time and help. Hopefully, we'll
No
get
problem.